I used to work the graveyard shift when I was a CNA. Let me tell you, there were so many scary stories about the residents who lived there and used to live there. During my shift, we had just hired a new girl, so I was training her for the night, even though it was my only second week on the graveyard shift. She had told me that she was going to use the restroom. 30 minutes had passed by, and I started to wonder what was taking her so long. I went into the restroom but didn't see her there, so I figured that she was probably checking up. As I was walking back to the front desk, I noticed that one of the rooms, which had been vacant for a few weeks, had its door open. That room always gave me an eerie feeling whenever I passed it. I quickly went to close the door, but I noticed the bathroom light was on. Feeling scared, I debated with myself whether I should go check who was in there or not. I had heard many stories about this particular room, but fearing it might be a resident wandering around, I gathered my courage and walked inside. When I entered the bathroom, I saw my new coworker there. I exclaimed, "Oh, you scared me. What are you doing in here?" She replied, "I went into the restroom and there was this elderly lady inside. She looked lost, so I asked her which room she was in. She didn't say anything but motioned for me to follow her. I don't know why, but she wanted me to wash her clothes." My hair stood on end by now. We had recently had an elderly lady in that room who had passed away and was known for wandering around. Not wanting to scare my coworker, I kept my mouth shut. I nodded my head and told her to leave the clothes there, saying that someone would take care of it in the morning. We both started to leave the room, and she suddenly said, "She's gone again. I just laid her in bed right before you came." I forced a laugh and told her that it's something that residents always love to do, wandering off and returning later. We quickly got out of the room, but my hair was standing on end the whole night. The next day, I told her exactly what happened, and since then, neither of us worked the graveyard shift anymore. I don't think this will scare many listeners, but just something I experienced at a place I used to work at. It all started with work overload. We had more overtime than possible. I would be the only one from my shift to take advantage of all the OT that was given out. I worked the third shift, which many people call the graveyard shift. It was fun working there because I was the only Hmong guy who worked that shift for many years. The road that I work on has had many shares of accidental car deaths along that road. We all heard stories about the deceased people's spirits roaming around our facility. Back to my story. I went to work early on a Wednesday. I started my shift at around 6 p.m. and went to lunch all by myself. Since I worked overtime, my lunchtime didn't correspond with my other coworkers. Many nights I would go outside around 1 a.m. to take my lunch. Nothing has ever happened to me before, nor has my eyes ever played tricks on me either. But for some odd reason, that Thursday morning, I saw something white outside the company gate. Our facility is gated. Either it was walking or floating. I couldn't see it as well because I was about 15 or 20 yards away. As I saw this white thing in front of the gate walking, floating by, the hair on my arm stood up, and trust me, I left my lunch and scanned myself back into the building. There's this huge garage door facing the main gate entrance. I walked from the side of the building into the work area and thought to myself, let me see from the garage door if it's still there. So I walked and looked out the garage door. It was still there. I opened the door next to it and popped my head out for 2 minutes. It just kept on going by. But now that I got a closer look, it wasn't walking because I couldn't see any arm movements. I got freaked out, so I closed the door and went back to work. Noticing I left my lunch outside, I didn't care for it. I told this to some of my coworkers, and for some, they just said, "Did you really see it?" I said, "Not sure what it was or what it is, but yeah, I did." The story floated throughout the company, and it freaked out a lot of the Hmong elders. I think that's one of the reasons why they partner up to go as a group when they go home, especially the ones from swing shift, and might be a reason why none of them want to work overtime since they can't start before their shift. There are many stories about this place, but this was my experience. Interested in sharing your stories? Submit them to HmongChronicles@gmail.com or in the description below. Here is the next story. Thank you. Back when I was a freshman in high school, my sister and I worked together in the same restaurant. She was a year older than me and was a sophomore at the time. Our shifts would always end at the same time so that we could both get home safely. Our times mostly ended at 9 p.m. when the restaurant closed. We usually had a ride home, but my sister rode her bike to work the other day and we couldn't leave it at our workplace, or it could be stolen. So we came up with the idea to ride the bike together to get home. She sat on the bar between the seat and the handlebar. The night was pretty warm and there were still a lot of cars out, so there was nothing eerie about the atmosphere or anything. That was until we crossed the big bridge. To get home, we had to go down the bridge that separated two parts of the city since our workplace was downtown. Even though her head was kind of in my view, it was fine by me because there were so many brown water bugs flying around and I didn't want them in my eyes. We were speeding downhill on the left side of the bridge, laughing and joking around when I suddenly saw something. Standing there, on the other side of the railing was a brown smudgy figure. I knew for a fact that there was nothing to stand on if you were to be on the other side of the railing. But that's not the worst part. When we passed the figure, it ducked or fell as if we caught it by surprise. When it happened, I was trying to make sense of things. Maybe it was the brown water bugs tricking my eyes, but I remember seeing the individual hands on the railing before the thing fell. I stopped laughing right away, but my sister didn't notice. She just kept on joking around. I guess she didn't see it. I quickly sped down the bridge and didn't stop until we got home. When we did, I immediately asked her if she saw it and told my family about what happened. She said she never saw anything. I expected my mom to tell me that it was a trick of the eye or that I was tired, but she scared me even more. Apparently, there was a young Thai boy who jumped off there recently. I don't want to reveal the location or the bridge due to respect, but I never biked home again after that night. There have been many unusual incidents in Auditorium 6, but here is one of my very own recent encounters at my workplace. We opened the theater at 11 a.m., but before every opening, we would do a run-through of checking all of the auditoriums. It's to make sure that all the lights are working properly and that the room is clean. As I start checking from 1 to 5, it was fine, until I entered room number 6. When I entered the room and turned the light switch on, I would routinely look up and check the lights right above me. When I did look up, I saw a girl leaning over the rails right above me. With her hair hanging down from the rail and her eyes stared right into mine, I thought to myself, there shouldn't be anyone up there. She gave me a smile and giggled. At that moment, I forgot to be scared but was more worried about why there would be someone in the auditorium at this time, and my job was to make sure that everything was clear before we opened. I walk up the walkway into the area where people are seated. I then turned and went up the stairs to the area where I saw the girl looking down at me. To make sure that no one was there or hiding by the seats, I double-checked around that area, but there was no one in sight. Once I realized that I was alone, I started to freak out. I felt the hair on my back stand up. Chills ran throughout my entire body. Trying to hold myself together and trying really hard not to lose my mind and freak out, I made my way back down and out the door. I felt as if I was being chased out of there. The more I panicked, the closer I felt her coming closer behind me. When I got to the front desk, I was in tears. I was in shock and totally freaked out. I told the guy that was opening with me that morning to go finish checking the rest of the auditorium. So now when I do the checking in the morning, I make sure I have someone to go with me to auditorium number 6. Ever since that day, I have not seen her or anything in that auditorium again. But my other coworkers have encountered many strange things in auditorium number 6.